Hello chess fans, this is Rick from Chess to Impress with coverage of round 11 of the 2018 Tata Steel tournament played on the 26th of January. I'll show you the results and the standings at the end of the video, but first let's look at a China versus India clash. The strongest female player on the planet, Hou Yifan, against former world champion Viswanathan Anand. Hou Yifan has had a very bad tournament so far. She only managed 4 draws so far. And Anand has a very good tournament. He won 3 games against Jones, Matlakov and Caruana and only lost so far to Vladimir Kramnik. Let's have a look at their game. Anand was white, Hou was black. c4 from Anand, e6, knight c3, d5, d4, knight f6. It's a queen's gambit declined here. Anand took on d5 and Hou Yifan took back with the knight, and the opening now falls under the semi-Tarrasch. It's one of Hou's main openings. She's played this a number of times before, so Anand was prepared. He played e4, knight takes, b takes, c5, attacking white center, and here the main move, the move that has been played a lot in the past, is knight f3, and then you get c takes d4, c takes d4 as the main line, and then black is able to swap a pair of bishops with bishop b4 check. Bishop d2, takes, takes. All very playable, but Anand explained afterwards that now the new plan for white is rook b1 instead of knight f3 to avoid black being able to swap a piece in the opening. Bishop e7 from Hou Yifan. Knight f3 from Anand, black castled, bishop c4, knight c6, Anand castled, b6, and bishop e3, making sure the d-pawn is well enough protected so that the queen can go to e2 where it wants to go in this system. Bishop e7, queen e2 as planned, c takes, rook c8, rook fd1, queen c7, and d5. Anand confirmed after the game that he was still in his preparation and thought that this was quite pleasant for white. Knight e5 from Hou Yifan, and here Anand explained that taking on e5 does not work. Black takes back. And then you have d takes e6, and queen takes e4 is the variation, and now there's a checkmate threat on g2 with queen and bishop battery. White can first take on f7 with check, king h8, f3 to deal with the checkmate, queen takes e4, picking up a piece, but the queens are swapped, and with rook d7, white will win the piece back because both bishops are hanging. The variation continues. Bishop c5, bishop takes, rook takes, white wins the piece back. Rook a5, attacking the a-pawn and defending the a7 pawn. Rook b2 and g6, followed by king g7 to collect the f-pawn. And Anand didn't think this was much for him. He thought this was an equal position. He said he could double his 2 rooks on the 7th rank, but then black will start running with the a-pawn, and he didn't expect much from this line. So that was after knight e5, the move played in the game, and then taking on e5. But Anand didn't like this, as we just saw. So he decided to play another move. He decided to play bishop b5. E takes d5 was Hou Yifan's move. Anand took back, and a pair of knights was swapped. Queen takes, and here Hou Yifan played bishop c5. In the analysis they also quickly looked at bishop d6, is that a better option? And Anand said, well, then he will play h4. And he didn't give many moves, but he gave an idea of how he would want to play this, and that's quite instructive. He said he wants to push h5, and then he wants to threaten to push h6, so that black will have to play h6 herself, and that's a concession. And then he said white has two plans. One is with bishop back to d3 and queen on f5 to set up this battery, and another idea that white has in that position is then to play the queen to g4. And he called it harassment, and black will suffer a lot. Interesting to hear Anand talk about not just about concrete moves, but about a plan for his pieces, a plan of attack. So that after queen takes f3 and then bishop d6, but Hooijen played bishop c5. Rook bc1, and here Anand explained that rook fd8 is not a good move because of bishop g5, and black probably does not want to play f6, which weakens the structure somewhat, so you have to go back with the rook, and black has lost time. Hooijen did not play rook fd8, she played queen e7. Anand played bishop f4 here, and he explained after the game why bishop takes c5 does not work. He gave this long variation: rook takes c5, and then d6, attacking black's queen, but of course white's queen is also under attack after that move. Bishop takes f3, and then d takes e7, winning the queen back. Bishop takes d1, rook takes d1, rook takes b5, and because of your weak back rank you cannot play rook d8, because if it's checkmate in a few moves. So after rook takes b5 you have to play f4, at least that was Anand's move in this variation, and then f6, then rook d8 is possible, and then here a nice way to play rook e8 is the only move. After all, black is rook up, so he is okay giving a rook back. He has no other option anyway. Rook takes d8 check, king f7, attacking the rook, rook g8, king has to take the pawn, rook takes g7, king e6, rook takes a7, and king f5. And Anand said there is too little to play with here. This looks like a draw. One more variation. So after queen e7 we looked at bishop takes c5, rook takes, d6 with both queens hanging, and then it was Grandmaster Erik Hansen who said what about queen g5, and Anand had also calculated that variation. White can play rook takes c5, and it works because white is now attacking black's queen with this move. Anand showed the following variation: bishop takes queen, rook takes queen, bishop takes d1, rook e5, and this is winning for white. White is going to play d7 and rook e8. And there's nothing black can do against this. This is winning for white. So all this after queen e7, a move from the game, and then bishop takes c5. And because of the first variation we just saw, Anand decided to play something different. He played bishop f4. Bishop d6 from Hooijen, and bishop c6 from Anand. Hooijen took on f4, queen takes, and took on c6. And Anand took back with the pawn. Here he said it was probably not the exact line that he had prepared with his second, but he said we had been looking at lines with a pawn on c6, so he still felt comfortable that he had a good position here. Here Ho played queen c7. In the analysis afterwards they also looked at rook fd8, and then Anand showed this line: rook takes d8 check, queen takes, and c7. Queen d7, and Anand said I'm going to play h4, and then pile up on the c-file, put the rook in front and then the queen behind, and that is a way for white to play for a win. He can torment black for a long time. Another idea instead of h4 and then piling up on the c-file is queen f3, although Anand said I probably have to play h3 first to make some air for the king. The idea here is to play the queen to b7, and that's also a way for white to try and play for a win. For a second it looks like black can just win the c-pawn, but it can't. Rook takes c7 would be a big blunder because of queen a8 check, the weak back rank. Queen c8, queen takes, and that queen is protected through an x-ray by the rook on c1. Rook takes and checkmate. So all this was after d takes c6 and then rook fd8, but as said, Hooijen played queen c7. Rook d6, Anand called this a very precise way to bring the rooks into their best positions. Rook cd8, rook cd1, h6 making air for the king, and g3 to make air for the king and protect the queen, which is handy in some variations. Rook takes, rook takes, rook c8, queen e5, and this is a very difficult position to play for black. She's totally passive, she can only sit and wait and suffer. You can't even make waiting moves with the king. King h8 would fail to rook takes h6, check, because this pawn is pinned. And if you play king f8, then there is queen d5 like we see in the game. Anyway, in the game, Hooijen played b5, queen d5 from Anand, king h7, queen e4 check, king back, and rook d7. And still you cannot take that pawn because of rook d8 check, a very nice tactical motif, distracting this rook so that the queen will be unprotected. Rook takes d8, queen takes c6, and white wins. So after rook d7, Hooijen played queen a5 to save her queen, c7 from Anand, and again you cannot take the pawn. Rook takes c7 fails too. Mate in 1, do you see it? Indeed, rook d8 is checkmate. So you cannot take the pawn. Rook f8 was played by Hooijen, and queen e7 was the last move of the game. Hooijen resigned after 33 moves. The big threat here is queen takes f8, king takes back, and then white can promote and will be a rook up. And you cannot play the rook away either because there is mate in 2, queen takes f7 check, and mate on g7. So after queen e7, Hooijen resigned and picked up her 7th loss in this tournament. It must have been a very frustrating one. It's always horrible to play a position where there's nothing you can do apart from sit and wait and suffer. Anand is completely back in this tournament. He still has a chance to win. He's only half a point behind the leaders. The results of round 11. 3 wins for white. We saw Anand against Ho. Wesley So beat Gawain Jones. Mamedyarov and Carlsen played a draw, as did Matlakov and Svietler, and Sergei Karyakin. He had a very quiet start of the tournament, but is slowly but surely making his way up the ranking. He beat Vladimir Kramnik. Caruana and Giri played a draw, as did Adiban and Wei. In another India versus China clash. With 2 rounds to go, these are the standings. We still have 3 leaders, Giri, Carlsen and Mamedyarov. Anand is only half a point behind and is definitely still in contention to win his 6th Tata Steel tournament. Kramnik lost today and he is now on 6.5 out of 11 together with Karyakin and Wesley So. Peter Svietler on his own in 8th place, and Wei, Caruana and Matlakov have 4.5 points. Half a point behind is Jones. Adiban is 3.5 and Hooijen still in bottom place with 4 draws and 7 losses. It will all be decided in the last 2 rounds. By the way, if players end in joint first place after the 13 rounds, there will be a tie-break played. Round 12 will be played on Saturday the 27th of January, and we will see Ho against Wei, the Chinese players playing each other, Giri against Adiban, Kramnik Caruana, Svietler Karyakin, Carlsen Matlakov, Jones Mamedyarov, and Anand against So. I will be here after the round to tell you what happened. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe to the Chess to Impress channel. Please leave a comment, and if you liked the video, it would be great if you could share it on social media. You also may want to check out my Chess to Progress channel. The link is in the description box. This is Rick for Chess to Impress. Thank you for watching.